It's been out for ages, thousands of cameras have been released since, but here are 5 reasons why you still should take a long, serious look at the Canon 5D Mark III with Magic Lantern. First of all, it's full frame. Super 35 might be more practical and Super 16 has the vintage look I love, but there is no denying the epicness of VistaVision sized full frame. The weight definitely helps keeping it steady as well.
And Canon DSLR, you kind of know exactly where things are on both cameras. They're pretty much using the exact same button configuration and layout. Although we have a new addition to the 7D Mark II, which is the new autofocus selection mode dial switch, which essentially will allow you to toggle between different autofocusing selection modes, which is a really nice, convenient button that's dedicated towards that. Before, you had to use the M function button at the top of the camera, which is now available for you to customize a specific command on. Now, the primary difference between these two cameras definitely has to be the imaging sensors inside. We have a standard APS-C size sensor on the 7D Mark II, which has a resolution of 20.2 megapixels, and on the 5D we have the full frame 35mm sensor that has a resolution of 22.3 megapixels. Now, most of you already know the different advantages of a full frame DSLR camera compared to a crop sensor camera, but mainly speaking, in terms of image quality, you typically find a better low light performance on full frame cameras compared to crop sensors, but we're going to go ahead and test that out later on in the video. Now, although the 5D Mark III may have a couple of advantages in terms of sensor size, we do find that every other aspect about taking pictures and shooting video is more feature rich on the 7D Mark II. If we talk about the autofocusing system, we can notice that we do have a lot more autofocusing points of 65 points, which are all cross type, compared to 61 points on the 5D Mark II and only about 41 are cross type. Additionally, the autofocusing system has been revamped from the 5D Mark III, so it's a little bit faster and more accurate than what we saw in the 5D. The other really big thing about the 7D Mark II is that it's using that dual pixel technology that was introduced in the 70D last year, which is a hybrid autofocusing system that uses phase detection autofocusing in live view. So that means not only can you get really fast autofocusing speeds in a live view when you're shooting stills, but in terms of video, this is a huge asset. That's probably one of the best autofocusing systems for a large sensor video camera. The big party trick that the 7D Mark II has compared to the 5D is now we have 10 frames per second maximum burst mode, which is almost double of what the Mark III can do at 6 frames per second, which really means that this sub $2,000 camera is competing against one of the top level DSLRs you can get from Canon, the 1DX, which can also do 10 frames per second. And if you couple that capability with the new autofocusing system on the 7D, this is probably one of the best sports nature photographer cameras you're going to get out there. And if you can see from my example over here, the results are fairly impressive. Now, we're just going to take a brief moment to actually compare the silent shooting modes on these two cameras to see which one has the quieter shutter sound. Now, one of the really great things about both cameras is that both viewfinders have 100% coverage, so they're very accurate in giving you the best representation of what your final image is going to look like through the viewfinder. Now, looking at the LCD displays on the back of these cameras, you do notice that we have a larger display, about 3.2 inches on the Mark III and about 3-inch display on the 7D, but they both have the same exact resolution. So in terms of PPI count and overall screen clarity, the new 7D is just a bit clearer than the 5D, but unfortunately, it is not a touchscreen display, which is kind of unfortunate because we did see touchscreen displays in most of their lower level DSLRs, and this would have been a nice addition to have that, especially for accessing different menu features. And the other thing that would have been nice to have would be a articulating screen, but I can definitely understand why Canon won't put that into the 7D, because that's really designed to be a very rugged and durable camera. A lot of nature photographers use them, and having an articulating screen could compromise some aspects of durability and the overall ruggedness of the camera. And just in terms of some of the unique features the 7D has that the Mark III doesn't have is that it has built-in GPS as well as a USB 3.0, which is one of the first Canon cameras to have that interfacing, so it can transfer your data back and forth quite fast. We also do have an intervalometer built in, so if you do a lot of time-lapse photography or even some hyperlapse stuff, that's an excellent feature to have. Now let's finally take a look at the stills capabilities between these two cameras. We're actually using the exact same exposure settings. We're shooting on RAW. In terms of the low light stuff, we're shooting at JPEG just to show you the processing difference between the two. And we are using the exact same lenses, although you're never going to get the exact framing right because there are different sensors. But I did my best to keep the frame lines as consistent as possible. So let's go ahead and take a look at these stills and see which one comes on top in terms of stills capabilities. In terms of sharpness and clarity, I think they're both kind of on par with each other. I do find that the 5D at times is just a hit more sharper and certainly has a cleaner overall image, although the 7D is a huge improvement compared to most of Canon's crop sensor DSLR cameras. In terms of dynamic range and latitude, I think both the cameras are pretty much on par with each other when you're using 14-bit RAW files. You have so much flexibility in getting details out of the shadows and recovering highlights and things like that. So they're pretty much in par in terms of overall landscape photography and things like that. In terms of low light, however, we again find a difference between the cameras. Certainly speaking, the 5D is cleaner. You can pretty much use the 5D up to like 6400 ISO with no problems, and I think the 7D Mark II definitely does a good job in terms of 6400 ISO and 3200 ISO, but 12800 is a little bit more harder to use, and it's certainly a lot more usable on the 5D. So anything over that, you're kind of getting into a little bit more of a noisy territory, but I think the 5D is a fantastic low light camera and certainly more of a versatile camera when it comes to low light performance. Now, we live in a world where a lot of people are using DSLR cameras primarily for video, so this is a huge factor in which camera is kind of the better overall. Now, in terms of options, we have a whole bunch of different options in terms of video capturing formats. We can either choose to record in MP4 or .mov on the 7D versus we only can record on MOV, so it depends on what kind of editing platform you use, but you have a more versatile options. Now, the big feature on the new 7D is that it can actually record 1080p at 60 frames per second versus you have to bump down the resolution to 720p on the 5D if you want to record any kind of slow motion on the 5D. But in terms of overall kind of bitrate and things like that, apart from the 1080p 60 FPS, there's not a whole lot of difference. You can record intra-frame in both cameras, so they're both really good in terms of editing platform and rendering out really clear and smooth motion. Additionally, we do also have manual audio level controls with a microphone input as well as a headphone jack on both cameras. This is really essential for all you videographers out there, as well as uncompressed HDMI that can output 8-bit at 422. So if you have an external recorder, you could probably get a little bit better in terms of color and clarity if you have an external recorder. But we're going to actually record our video internally, and now we're going to do a side-by-side comparison between the video footage that I shot throughout the week and see which camera comes on top in terms of video. The big difference in terms of video will definitely be the low light capabilities, because basically when taking a look at this scene over here, we can definitely see that the 7D definitely does an excellent job in terms of rendering out the overall image at high ISO between 1600 to 6400. I think the camera does an excellent job. Anything higher than that, we start getting into a lot of noise issues, and we're not using any noise reduction software both in camera or using any kind of post noise reduction software. So definitely not bad, but when we take a look at the 5D Mark III capability of low light, we definitely notice a difference in terms of how clean that overall image is. In fact, you can probably in some shots get away with even 12,800 ISO. So it's definitely a very promising low light camera, as we saw previously from the stills capabilities of the 5D Mark III. Now, just to conclude some of my thoughts on the 7D Mark II versus the 5D, I think both cameras offer pretty much the exact same performance when it comes to overall image quality differences. The stills capability on the 5D is a little bit more superior in terms of overall image quality, but I think the autofocusing system and the metering system and the whole aspect of all the different options you get on the 7D is more feature rich and definitely more advanced in a lot of different ways. The other cool thing in terms of videos, I think the 7D has the edge up in terms of image quality just by a slight margin, but low light wise the 5D still is the winner there. But overall, in terms of the whole space of Canon cameras, I think these are obviously the best overall cameras if whether you're a hobbyist or getting into professional level photography or videography. These are two great options. But on that, guys, that's really it. If you have any specific questions about anything I talk about in this video, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Let me know if you guys were to actually get a camera for videos and photos, which one would you pick, or do you already have the Canon 5D or perhaps even a 7D and want to upgrade to a Mark II? Would you want to go for the full-on 5D Mark III or go for the 7D? Because I think honestly, in terms of video functionalities, the 7D Mark II definitely has a couple of different features that I would definitely like. Unfortunately, there's no flip out screen, so you might be interested in the 70D, and if you're interested in a direct comparison between the 70D and the 7D, I have that video on our channel, so definitely check back to that. But definitely love to hear all of your thoughts about the comparison, so definitely leave all those things in a comment down below. Give us a thumbs up if you liked the video, and we'll see you later. Take care.